Increased stress destroys self-confidence with Katy Goshtasbi, episode 154. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another amazing guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today I have an amazing guest for you. My guest is Katy Goshtasbi, and Katy is a refugee, former securities lawyer turned branding expert. She runs a global branding company for over 12 years. She's also an author with 2 books. So you have something that I don't have. I plan to write some books, but it's planned, it's not done. She's also an author with 2 books and one in the works, a researcher, coach, and professional public speaker. She was chair of the ABA Law Practice Division 2 years ago and is chair of the ABA Law Practice Division Diversity and Inclusion Committee this year. Katy, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. That was a lot you said there, huh?
Yeah.
You said my name right, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, a little bit of practice beforehand doesn't help, so it doesn't hurt. So, well, I want to dive right into this. Our audience always wants to know, like, who is this that we're listening to? What is your story? I know you're a refugee, but give me the backstrokes, the backstory of how you got involved with law, how you ended up leaving that and starting the branding company and the work that you're doing with the ABA. Just give us some of that background so we know who you are.
Sure. Thanks for asking. You know, I teach people how to write their brand stories. I called it their personal connection stories. So this part is really important because people are like, what does yours sound like? So as you said, I'm a refugee. We left Iran in 1979 because the revolution kicked up. We weren't Muslim, and not that there's anything wrong with being Muslim, but we weren't. So we had to leave, and we thought we were leaving for 2 weeks, and we packed up 2 suitcases, but we never went back. So I got to grow up in the Midwest in Indiana, and I always wanted to save the world, Moshe, by becoming a lawyer, which most people laugh at, except as lawyers, but I got to do that. So I had a thriving practice. I was a federal securities lawyer in Washington, D.C. most of the time. I was a federal lobbyist at first, so I know how that ugly sausage is made. Then I became an attorney at the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. I was there when Enron blew up, for your audience who remembers Enron. And then I went in-house. Oh, sorry, I had one more stop in between there. I went to a major law firm in their D.C. office. And then that was where I started to give advice. My second career started during my first career. Lawyers would always come to me and go, how'd you get ahead? How'd you get that job? How'd you get your practice to grow? And I would always be like, I don't have time for this, but I'm going to take you to lunch. I'm going to tell you what I do. And if it works for you, great. If not, I'll take you back to lunch. And then I went in-house. I moved to Southern California because my family was here, and I was investment counsel at a major insurance conglomerate. And that was when I burnt out. So I had spent 15 hours drafting this much, a very small bit of a mutual fund prospectus. And I went home that night and reflexively opened up my mailbox, 9 o'clock at night. There was my own prospectus, and I just threw it away because no one reads that stuff. And that was my big aha moment that, oh my gosh, this is not why I became a lawyer. I did not become a lawyer to draft documents that no one reads. It's a very personal decision, and I'm not asking any other lawyer listening to make that decision at all, because it's a noble profession and we need good lawyers. For me, it was not my purpose, and I am here to help lawyers achieve their purpose by practicing law. So I left the career, and 2 years before the recession, everyone thought I was nuts. I was pretty sure I was nuts because everyone was like, you're the only one we know that's been around the block in the legal industry, and you're so well regarded. And apparently it was a very attractive career. So I said, I know I'm crazy, but I just can't do this. It's going to kill me. My gastroenterologist had told me that my stress was so high. I had such bad acid reflux. He said, this will kill you. So I just had to heed that advice. And I'm not sure I really listened to him, but all of it just came down on my head. So I changed careers completely. I started working with an ex-Harvard litigator on what's a natural talent. And I really realized what I do now is what's natural to me. And the point is, when we teach lawyers what their natural talents are, we're not changing their professions. We're helping them to find their place where they're doing something that they're so good at during the day that people naturally gravitate towards them. And the byproduct becomes practicing law, which they become even better at. So I started doing that. And they're right. When people come to you and you're practicing your natural talent, they gravitate towards that because they can tell you just do it with ease and grace. And it's a lot of fun. And so that's what I do now. It's a global business focused on who are you? What's your brand? And sometimes it's a tough conversation to have. It's partly therapeutic, it seems, but it's not just for lawyers, although that's a huge audience. It's for professionals who are trying to figure out how to distinguish themselves. Why is it that when I introduce myself, people can't tell me who I am? Why am I not memorable? How do I make my practice grow as a result? And how does the firm really have a vibe and a brand that they understand intellectually, but can market smartly to get the results they want?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of parallels between what you went through and what I did. So I don't know if you know this about me, but I spent 20 years as an IT professional
No.
before I then became an accountant. So what happened is about 10 years into it, I went through a divorce, and that divorce was, it was kind of like your prospectus moment. That was my moment of saying, hey, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I reevaluated everything in my life. I reevaluated my religious beliefs and affiliations. I reevaluated what I was doing for a living. And actually, so I'm also a paramedic. Another
Wow.
interesting anecdote about me. And it was during the year after I got divorced or when I was going through that I decided to go to medic school. At the same time, I was working a full-time job, which is insane. Medic school is a 2,500 hour program or so for a year. Some people break it over 2, but I'm a go-getter. And I was working 60 hours at a day job and then doing a 2,500 hour program on top of that. You have to imagine what my life looked like. But through this process, I was able to take a step back and say, okay, I'm going to take a break from IT. I'm going to work full time as a paramedic, and I'm just going to kind of like figure life out while I'm doing that. And for a couple of years, I worked just as a paramedic and doing nothing else. Ultimately, I went back to IT because being a paramedic doesn't pay. It doesn't pay nearly enough. I was paying more in child support than I was earning at the job. And so something had to give. And I went back to IT. But during that time, I started evaluating, what am I doing? And I said, you know what, when at the end of life, when I'm done and I look back at my accomplishments, I don't want to say, well, I helped this company get their servers back from some ransomware attack.
Exactly.
That's not compelling enough for me. And although I'm really good at what I do, I just don't feel like that's my calling. And I have some personal experiences on the financial side. My grandfather was an immigrant, kind of like you. He came from Nazi Germany with his father, lost the rest of his family, and ultimately he created some cash from being a business owner, invested with some cousins in a piece of real estate on the west side of Manhattan. That piece of real estate obviously went up in value over time. And in the last 20 years or so, started selling off the individual units in there and turning it into a co-op. And the cash from that, he turned around and he gave every one of his 36 grandchildren the down payment on their first home. And he also helped us pay for our children to go through private school. So being the recipient of that, being on the recipient side of that, really changed the trajectory of my life. It allowed me to get started on certain parts of life that I would have taken years to get to, and do that early. And I was a homeowner at the age of 21. I got married at 19. So
Wow.
just to give you some color about my where I went, but when I was going through this reevaluation period, I said, you know what? I want to help people be able to do the same. And now my mission statement is to empower people with wealth creation so that this and future generations can lead a better life. And it's all based on my own, me being a recipient of that, me going through and reevaluating what I want to do and realizing that I can have a bigger impact on the world. So how did I become an accountant? Well, I decided that I want to focus on helping people create this wealth. And what's the best way to do that is to be a business owner and generate extra cash, which then you can deploy in other places. So I went to school. I had never gone to college. I had started working straight out of high school. And I went to school to get a degree, and I started to take business classes, and I had done a lot of various parts of business. I had managed employees. I had done sales and marketing. I had managed the IT, obviously, but I had never done the accounting part. So I started to take accounting classes, and I said, this is something that I'm really good at. I really enjoy, and I've never been exposed to it. And I started to go down this path of becoming a CPA. I got my MBA, took the 4 exams, and then I couldn't get a job as an accountant. Nobody wanted to hire me. I was overqualified. I was too far in life. They wanted a workhorse that they weren't going to get. So I started my own practice. And that kind of morphed into advisory services. I happened to get some attorney clients, and I suddenly realized that there's an industry of professionals that are very well educated that just need help with business and business finances. And Profit with Law was born, and that here we are today with this brand that I'm building, and this amazing group of people that I can help. And it's a starting point, right? I don't plan on only helping lawyers. I think I can help a massive amount of people over time. And I think that you have to dream big and follow those dreams. So I'm sharing my story with you because stories are important. And for people who are listening to this show at various points, they've heard different parts of that story. And they're listening to this show partially because they resonate with that. They like me as an individual because of that, because I've shared that with them.
Yeah. And, I really value that. I learned a lot about you. And the thing is, like you said, they're important, but they're difficult, which is why I do what I do. Because, even after 12 years and thousands of lawyers still say to me, and professionals all do, is my brand about me or the business? And why do I have to get so personal? Why? This is painful. Like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to dig up stuff from my past. I don't want to tell people about me. It's too personal. And they're right. They're absolutely correct. However, human buying behavior is what it is. And I always tell them, become a student of psychology and marketing at the same time. Please, you don't need to change careers, but you have to understand that upwards of 78% of everything that you and I buy, including legal services, is not based on content or how good the lawyer in the law firm is. It's based on whether I like them and that they emotionally resonate with me. And likability is kind of sometimes rough for people. I always tell everyone, all my conversations should make you uncomfortable, because that's how I know you're growing and you're changing. Great brands adapt, are courageous, and are willing to grow and change. So if you're not getting uncomfortable with me, one, you're either not listening, or two, you already know this. So either way, stop and move on, right? Not everyone has to do this right now. Only people that are brave and willing and really, like you said, Moshe, want a remarkable career and want a remarkable life, right? So yes, it's painful. Yes, it can get touchy-feely, but it's not about the emotions necessarily. It's about the fact that that's how we buy, right? And the only emotion that sells anything of that statistical like ability, which we used to measure, by the way, when I was on the Hill as a lobbyist for political candidates, is happiness. Do you at some level make me happier than I was before you? At some level. I don't need a cheerleader if I'm going through divorce law. I get it. But you have to emotionally increase my tone. We call it the emotional tone scale. And you have to make me feel better with you than without you. And if you don't know who you are, right, optimally, and you can't really embrace that and just own it, then you don't come across with the self-confidence that sells you well. And so that impedes lawyers' progress. And my job is to tell them, look, this is simple, but not easy. This is not simplistic. It's foundational, though. It really is. Before you can grow the law firm brand, every lawyer needs to know what their brand is and who they are. And there's easy statistical tools we use around that because it works that way. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true because a lot of people have mentioned to me in passing or asked me questions around the fact of, hey, I am a far better lawyer than lawyer X. Why are they able to get so many clients and leads? How is that happening? And the reality is that's happening because they are better at understanding human psychology. They're better at understanding how to market their services to the target market, and they're better at handling them in that process. So people don't care. I mean, not that they don't care about the outcome, but they don't care if they're in the best hands from a legal perspective with most issues. They are more concerned about whether they are going to enjoy the experience. And
Absolutely.
and that's where I think the difference is. And you have to be able to embrace that and recognize, hey, if I'm a darn good attorney, now I got to focus on becoming a darn good salesperson and a darn good person for them to be enjoying spending time with, so that they look forward to our phone calls. They
Yeah,
look forward to
absolutely.
hearing from me, so that it's always that blissful relationship that they're having with me. And
Yeah,
it's
because it is
hard
a
to be at that
relationship.
point.
Yeah, it's a relationship, right? And so you said the word that most people want to avoid, sales, right? When
Mhm.
COVID happened, I started getting calls from lawyers. Oh my gosh, do I sell? Do I not sell? I'm like, well, are you good at what you do? And are you a benefit to me? Then you need to tell me about that. That's not, you have to reframe the way you look at the word sales.
Mhm.
And introverts say this to me all the time. Well, I'm an introvert. I can't do any of this stuff that you want me to do. Yes, you can. 99% of my client base is introverts. You know, I'm the only extrovert generally in the room. My husband is a dentist, is an introvert. Everyone's an introvert. Introverts can do this because all I'm asking you to do is bump up against your comfort zone, do it your way, but have an intentional strategic branding plan, because nothing without intentionality works. And I want 2021 to be a better year for people than 2020. And part and parcel with this whole conversation of everything you said, Moisha, is this concept of stress. So I did research 12 years ago at UCLA with a neuroscientist to prove my theories, and I found out there's a direct inverse correlation between stress and self-confidence. So as your stress goes up, your self-confidence proportionally starts to drop. It's physiological. It must happen that way. And when that happens, your brand value goes down. What that really means is you're no longer emotionally resonating with your audience. Exactly what you said. They don't like being around you. This is also, by the way, true for personal life. If you're trying to get a date, if you're trying to get your kids to go to bed on time, all of this is just the principles of human behavior. And so my job is to get people to understand this, professionals to understand this, because the products industry certainly does. Coke wraps that beverage around happiness and sells it. So does Starbucks, so does Zappos, because they don't deliver shoes, they deliver happiness.
Mhm.
Professionals, we seem to think that that's a no-no, that we have to be like really stiff and professional. But to your point, if I'm going to pay $500 an hour for a lawyer, I better pay for somebody who I like to be around, who actually I feel like will make me better off than not. Because ceteris paribus, everyone should be a good lawyer. So when lawyers come to me, they're like, "Well, what's unique about me? I know I deliver on time. I'm really good practitioner, and I'm honest." I'm like, "That's not uniqueness. That's called being a professional and doing your job. Everyone should have say
I
that
love
way."
that.
So, I don't mean to deflate lawyers listening to this, but we got to tap into your right creative brain, because everything that lawyers say, including that, is from their left linear brain. It's the analytical portion that makes us good at practicing law. It does not make us good at actually figuring out who we are creatively and packaging it and selling it to the world for their consumption.
Yeah, what's interesting is that and I did a podcast episode on this, and I'm trying to find the the episode that I did. Um I'm searching my website real quick. I'm not coming up with it. My team will put the link to this in the show notes, but I did a episode where I hired a trademark attorney to trademark my law firm Growth Summit brand. And when I chose the attorney I was going to work with, and I actually paid for the services, literally 2 days later, I received a package in the mail, and it was a very unique gift box that had very specific things that had to do with their, what they wanted to make me feel. And it had confetti in it, and it had a cactus with a saying on it. I have to pull up the
Oh,
pictures to find it, but it was really well put together, and it all went. And honestly, when I opened that, people, when they make a decision after they make a big decision, like, okay, choosing an attorney or buying a car, right, they have buyer's remorse. They're like, did I make the right decision? It's a natural tendency to start questioning whether this was the right thing. And getting that package had absolutely nothing to do with delivery of legal services, but it had absolutely 100% everything to do with making me feel like, wow, I chose the right lawyer. I chose the right company to do business with. And it's amazing, but you have to start thinking that way. You have to start putting your feet in your client's shoes to be able to do the right things. We had a gentleman, Jim Armstrong, on the podcast recently. He started a company called Family of the Accused, the Family of the Accused Project, the FODA project. Basically, his wife had an issue with his stepson where he got arrested in a different state, and they had to go and find an attorney to handle his, to be his defense attorney. And he goes through the process that they had when in this high emotional state of being in this issue and needing to find the right advocate for their, for their loved one. And it's so insightful to hear it from the other side of the conversation, because you have to put yourself in those shoes. And the attorney that they chose, you know what the difference was with that attorney?
No,
they walked in and the receptionist smiled and made them feel welcome and comfortable. When they came into the conference room, they offered them water genuinely, like, we understand that you're going through something rough. Can I get you anything? How about just a bottle of water if, coffee and tea is not the right thing? And it was that experience of them feeling like, wow, here's somebody who understands what I'm going through. That is what sold them. Obviously, they chose an attorney they felt was the right attorney for the job, but it was the extra experience on top of that sealed the deal for them.
So many lawyers listening to you may be rolling their eyes going, oh Lord, now I have to do all these things. And it's always been that way. It really has. We work a lot with our clients on developing who they are through their adjectives and through their values, and it brings the firm together. But one of the big words around is caring and kindness, because people can sense when you're not kind. And I just did a blog post on that, and they can sense when it's not a genuine brand that's catering to them. So whoever's listening, don't take this overboard and become too much the other way, because we can also feel that ickiness when somebody's overselling us on fake niceness. But yeah, absolutely. And it's all about really standing in your own integrity of who you are. And if you care about these people, then that should be a given, right? But here's the problem. People are all over texted, over tweeted, over caffeinated, as I say, and we're running a million miles an hour. No one's present to any of this, right? So we all pretend like we're paying attention, but we're not. And so that lack of presence, and that's often a word that we capture for our clients. Present. Are you present? Because when you're not present, not only do you miss the details of being a lawyer, believe it or not, often, but you miss what's going on around you. And clients can sense that. They know when they're one of a million. And no one's expecting you to have one client, but all the other things really, really matter. And they're not soft skills. I mean, people know, don't call what I do soft skills, because it is 50% your substantive practice of law, and the other 50% the brand value and perception people have of you. And what you define the way you did, I define as your reality. Are you able to put yourself in other people's shoes? And what's your reality? And what's the reality of people for not showing up at your door? And we work backwards from there. And it takes insight in looking at who people are, really, to figure that out for themselves.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to something you said before, this inverse relationship between self-confidence and stress levels. That really was insightful to me, because I immediately went to my own experiences, and I started to think, okay, am I able to see that when my self-confidence lowers, when my self-esteem lowers, does that happen? Is that correlated to when I am at a higher level of stress? And I actually can see in my own life that is probably true. I'm thinking about specific situations, and I see that inverse relationship. So obviously, the key is to decrease stress, right? And decreasing stress is going to increase self-confidence, which makes everything work better. It makes you a better leader, a better manager, a better salesperson, a better, things at home are better, right? So first of all, what level of stress, or what kind of stress are we talking about, and how do we mitigate that? How do we be mindful and purposeful about relieving that stress and removing it?
Very good questions. And first of all, bravo, you get a gold star. Everybody knows I give everybody gold stars for really looking at that and taking it on and for your own life experiences. Because, some people say, oh, I don't have that, but everyone has it, right? So, the first part of your question was about really mitigation was the second part, but how do we stay mindful to it? So, finding it in your body is really critically important. So we have no baseline for stress anymore, right? Because we're so amped up that our baseline just gets higher and higher to the point where vacation, do you remember vacations before COVID, those things where people would go somewhere and in a hotel and relax? When we would go on vacation, all of a sudden everyone's body breaks down because your cortisol levels are released and your body's just releasing that stress. Well, you have to find a baseline, and your body will tell you when you're stressed. So go to your body and where you're carrying that stress, find it, and that's your indication, your first indication. So I carry it in my shoulders and in my jaw. When I feel that pressure and tension, I'm not optimal. I'm no longer as self-confident as I want to be, and I'm no longer able to communicate correctly to my audience, my message and who I am and what I do. Okay, in any way, shape, or form. So you have to stop in those moments, and mitigation is all about identification and self-awareness. Self-awareness is step one in the brand development process. And people are like, oh, that's so mushy. I'm like, is it? How do you fix a business and grow a law firm brand if you don't know what needs to be fixed? That's all I'm saying, right? And maybe nothing's broken. None of my clients are broken. They are all going from good to great or great to greater, but they're just willing to stop and look at themselves and go, stress. Okay, if this is a huge component of my self-confidence and going from good to greater, where do I carry it and what am I going to do about it? In the moment, there's only so many things you can do about it. It's not about going for a run or doing yoga. I'm pragmatic. Those things are great, but you're standing there getting ready to go into a client meeting. So identification and self-awareness is paramount. It's the old adage, the question is always more important than the answer, because without stopping and identifying where the stress is and having a baseline, you can't get to the answer. Okay. And so a lot of law firms want me to go in and do mentorship programs, right? They're like, oh, women lawyers are leaving, diversity, blah, blah. We need mentors. Come teach this group to be a good mentor for this group. And I say, that won't work. I won't do a mentorship program for you. I don't want your money. Why? Is because if I'm a stressed out lawyer, then now you're coming to me and burdening me with being somebody else's mentor. So I've got this added stress and this added responsibility, and now you're making things worse. So what I do is I call it branding bootcamp support circles. We come and teach everybody their brand, reduce everybody's stress, because why, to answer your question, to get the stress levels down means you know who you are and you know your uniqueness, you know your story, you know your talents, you know how to enunciate it, you know your unique audience because of who you are as a human being, and you're selling to a different audience than Joe, who's also a lawyer practicing employment law with you. Once you have all that under your belt, your self-confidence goes up immeasurably, plus those tools of where is your stress in your body. And then from there, you can mentor anyone. I just leave them with the mentorship program. I'm like, here's my gift to you. You can implement this. You don't need this now. You don't need me for this. But without all that, without the support of figuring out who people are fundamentally for themselves, you can't get the stress down, because we're just going, right? And society keeps telling us to keep going. So those are my answers.
And I really I like the fact that this approach is approaching it from the opposite side, right? The goal is not necessarily to attack the stress, it's to attack the self-confidence, right? Let's figure out how to make you more confident. Let's figure out how to fix your lack of confidence, make you self-confident, and then this seesaw is going to automatically correct your stress levels.
Absolutely.
Because as you become more self-confident, it's going to decrease your stress. And we can, I don't want to dive into the specifics of your study because we're just not going to have enough time, but intellectually and intuitively, I can already see why there is this correlation. I can see that when I lack self-confidence, it causes me to not be able to do the things that I want to do. It causes me to second guess whether I can get I could serve this client, whether selling to them is the right thing, whether, bringing on this employee is the right thing, whether handling this thing this way is, and all of those questions of, I'm not sure if this is the right thing, all of that is going to be adding to my stress level. On the flip side, if I approach a sales conversation saying, I know that I am the best person for this particular client, this particular case, and I would be doing them a disservice if I didn't give them the opportunity to work with me, I'm no longer selling to them. I'm walking into that conversation confidently. And guess what? That's going to make the sales process a better process. It's going to mean that they're going to be a better client, and they're going to be easier to convert into a client because they are going to feel like they're making the right decision, because they feel that confidence. They feel that. So
it'll also be
totally
a referral source for you as well. Yeah.
We're just about out of time. So I really wanted to get to talking about diversity in the workplace, and that whole conversation, we didn't address it. So we're going to have to bring you back and talk about that. But I understand that you have something that you do to help people with stress, some sort of challenge. So I'd love it if you can share with us the details about that.
Absolutely. And yes, I'd be happy to come back and talk about diversity, because we can cure the diversity problem with people developing their brands, and we'll just leave them in suspense and mystery until we have that conversation. But yeah, at the end of the year, I started to feel very burnt out, especially this year, right? With what's going on with the pandemic and everything in people's lives, and this change of atmosphere, and working from home, working from work, straddling both sides of the fence. And my clients and other lawyers started saying, hey, I am really feeling burnt out. What do? I still have to get through November and December. And so I decided to do a 14-day challenge. I know there's a lot of challenges out there, but this is specific to the brand on how to end 2020 without burnout, and then how to get ready and go into 2021 ahead of schedule with a brand that's shiny. So every day for 7 days in December 1st through 7th, I'm going to send an email out with content, with really a brand thought and something for you to implement on your own time, with your own effort, and it's a video, and people can sign up for that. And then once they sign up for that, they'll also be signed up then to receive January 1st through January 7th of how, now that we've avoided burnout in 2020 and we're going to end with the shiny brand, how do we get ahead in 2021 so that we feel good and we feel in control and empowered of our brand, and that automatically increases self-confidence. So that's the content I want to put out, my gift to people, because I think it's important, and I think it's been a tough year, and it's easy if you just follow what you see on the screen and adapt it for yourself. So that's my gift.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to link that up in the show notes so you guys can register and join into that challenge, and hopefully I'll get the time to be able to do that myself. If I do, I will join in there as well. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. And Katy, it was a pleasure having you here, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm looking forward to our next opportunity to get together.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Moshe. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, there you have it. Another great episode in the books. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more episodes like it, make sure to check back in your podcast directory. All of our previous episodes are there for your enjoyment. Make sure to hit the subscribe button so you get notified the next time that we release an episode. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday, and I appreciate you tuning in. And I'm looking forward to sharing another great guest speaker with you next week. And that's a wrap. Have a wonderful and a very happy Thanksgiving. Have you been enjoying the show? We sure hope so. To make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app. Next week, we will be back with more valuable resources and ideas on how to break the mold and take your law firm to the next level.